Mike Gillette makes the following commentary. When we are very young, the world actually is scary and dangerous. So we look for ways to protect ourselves from all of that. Most of us hide. We hide from the unknown and conceal ourselves in the familiar. And we pretend. We pretend that the familiar is safe. Too many scary and dangerous things happen to allow us the full comforts of our own self-deception. Illnesses, accidents, tragedies, hurricanes. All of these take place while we're wrapped in the security blanket of the familiar. In such a scary and dangerous world, it's hard not to hide. Hiding is hardwired. Hiding is a survival mechanism. But we are not here to survive. Life is not about survival. We're not going to. Not in this life. Life is about purpose. It is about that precisely because life takes place in a world that is scary and dangerous. Think about it. Even in an unfallen world, God allowed the serpent access. That's scary. That's dangerous. That's not Mike Gillette, that was me. A little comment. The solution: build within yourself an indomitable spirit. Be an example. Love life and love people. You'll find out there's nothing more scary or dangerous than that. To actually just love life and truly love people. And Jesus knows if you do that well, you will open yourself up to denial, abandonment, betrayal, and all the emotions and fear spikes that come from those things. We are trying to reconvert fear. I was asked, why reconvert? Well, it was originally just this holy, reverent awe. It's been converted into something else, and we have to reconvert it back to that affection that the holy angels experience. And Peter is our best coach to walk us through it. You know, he lived it. And he eventually got to the place where he saw what was really going inside of him, how the fear spike was wrecking him, even when he thought it was making him be courageous. His motives were conflicted from the beginning, and it crippled him, and it collapsed. And last week, we looked at those last 3 points. Face, fear, and anxiety. Face is the first F, face, the fear and anxiety. Fear is false expectations appearing real, or failure expected. We must act, but when we're jumping into it out of that, we overcorrect. My car's starting to slide to the right. We're going to wreck. And then we roll the car. It wasn't that tree on the right of the road that wrecked us. We wrecked us. Failure expected, action required, but we overcorrect. That's often true in leadership within ministry. Often people in leadership see problems, but they overcorrect. And they do it within themselves. And then either they do it to other people, they internalize that, never own it, wreck themselves. So we have to face that. Acknowledge what you're really believing, because a lot of what's driving that, what you're really believing is, it often comes down to basic things that you can see in Eden. Well, that person did that. They're not really for me. Or they don't love me. Or whatever. And I thought Clayton made a great comment in Sunday school. He just said, okay, sometimes I do that, and I'm just like, so what if it's true? So what if it is true? What then? Okay, I still have to process that. And I've got to acknowledge that I'm believing some stuff here, And I've got to confront that belief. Because in the end, Paul said it best, what does it matter who's against us if God is for us? Who can really be against us if God is for us? And really, I'm reacting to a lot of the stuff as if he were not. And that's terrifying. I have to confront that so I can just figure out, God, what are you asking me to do right now? How are you asking me to feel right now? You need to ask that question. We tend to act like our feelings are just our feelings. Well, they're really hard to change, but they can change. And if I say, well, they're just my feelings, then I'm just kind of a victim of my feelings. I need to confront that. And I need to really experience all those things and get in the present moment and say, God, what are you asking me to do? How are you expecting me to feel? How are you expecting me to think? Right now. And now let me just go work on doing that. And if I'm working on doing it, I will probably do it better than if I'm not working on doing it. And it's that pragmatic. It's not about doing it perfectly. We're not going to do that. But we can do it less horrifically. And someday we'll step on the other side and you'll see just how much God is for you, because he'll turn around and reward you for the very mixed ways that you did stuff that you couldn't have done at all if he wasn't doing it in you. You're like, was it really that? Yes, it's really that. That allows you, in that moment of combat, the basic training or the prep work in your kitchen, combat, or now Gordon Ramsay's breathing down your throat in Hell's Kitchen, to actually calm down, get in the present moment, and then you can think clearly. And it really is an incredible affirmation of you that God's even invited you into this fight. That he thinks that highly of man. That's where David would get in his better moments. Why do you think so highly of us? Why do we so occupy your mind? That's fearful. That's wonderful. Of course, that's where we all want to operate from there. David didn't always operate from there. There were the other times. I'm a worm and not a man. So, but there were times where David could affectionately, be that man whose heart was like God's heart, in a way that God's like, wow, that you just don't see many people that have ever been able to do that. Well, there's one guy, Jesus, but the son of David. And just to be that gracious, peaceful, joyful warrior, restored, Peter says, confirmed, strengthened, established. You're standing on God himself. Everything else is quicksand. That's peace. That's enjoying the meal of life so that we can break the cycle of fear. And that's our Revelation 12 passage. And to break that cycle of fear, we have to ask ourselves, when did all this begin? What really is the cause of the matter? Let's stop dealing with symptoms. Let's get to root causes. What really is the cause of the matter? And Revelation 12 tells you. Okay? It's not your difficult boss at work. It's not the hurricane. It's not the conflict in your marriage. It's not the child that you just don't feel like you can connect with and you feel like you're losing them. It's not the diagnosis you just got. I'm not minimizing any of those things. But when we spend all our energy fighting those, we're downstream from the source. And then we don't fight those as well because we're just medicating it. And you're medicating symptoms, and that never cures anybody. It can make your life more livable. And a lot of health is actually just managing symptoms while we try to get to a place where we can deal with root causes. So I'm not saying that's bad. I'm saying there are times we need to feel like, what's really going on here? And Paul tells us, your struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's trying to break your spirit. It's a fight for your own spirit. That's Revelation 12. verses 1 through 12, but especially verses 7 through 11. Right? All conflict, all war, all woe, all dysfunction, all politics, and selfish ambition and scheming starts in an unseen war. Everything you're getting of that is a derivative of that. It's downstream from it. Michael Card said it beautifully in his song, The Dragon, soberly, but a war in heaven reflected here on earth. And Michael and his angels fight for all their worth. Will you fight for all your worth? You're worth a lot. If you could understand how God really feels about you and tap into that and just be empowered to fight, that terrifies the devil. Not because you're all that. I mean, Clayton might be. He had that great answer. So no. Not because you're all that, but because God lives you in a way that he doesn't live in Michael, if you know Jesus. And the angels, the good angels, are just spurred to worship by these things. We are born into this war. We really are. The human race is born into this war. It predates us. You and I are experiencing it every day, though we rarely live in such awareness. And if we try to, we often go off the deep end. When really, reading Revelation 12 carefully tells us what to focus on in our part in the war. For us, when does this unseen war break into our experience? When it's this invisible spiritual war, where does it first break into our experience? It's in your thoughts, it's in your feelings, it's in your inner state. The first place we get attacked is emotionally, because that part of your being is so much faster than your cognitive part. That's the, then I try to figure out what's going on instead of dealing with the, let me deal with that, and kind of lean into that. Then start thinking. Most of the time, we're already done. As soon as the happens, it's downhill. It doesn't have to be, but it so often is. That fear spike that everybody experiences. Some express it more obviously, others internalize it, and then just die of strokes. But everybody has it. And it's easy as you feel that again and again and again and become almost anesthetized to it, to just embrace a victim mentality, which is rampant in our world today. The victim mentality is one of the greatest snares of the devil because it keeps you trapped in that fear loop. And he doesn't really have to do anything except when you start to come to your senses, get you spun up again. Oh, that's slowing down. Let me give it a push. Okay, let me get on to this thing. Revelation 12:11 tells us three things that are essential to overcome the dragon. God's sacrificial love, our willingness to speak, to initiate, to step into it, to make our voices heard as followers of Jesus Christ, and finally, an ability to not shrink back in fear, even from death itself. Three things. Not 37 things. Three things. No, it starts with God's sacrificial love. Rest in God's sacrificial love. As you get down to verse 11, which is our part in the war, you've got Michael and his angels and this whole battle going on in the angelic realm. But then John changes gears. He says in verse 11, and they have conquered him. He's not talking about the angels anymore. He's talking about the saints, believers in Jesus. So the angels are doing their angel thing, and you can get really caught up in that. And it's happening. Daniel got sucked up into it, became briefly aware of it. Prince of Persia, Prince of Greece, all this stuff going on. Paul was aware of it. He wrote about it in Ephesians 6. The apostles were aware of it, and we like to think that's the deep stuff. Let me go study what all these angels are doing. The devil wants you to do that. Because now you're focusing on what the angels are doing instead of, am I resting in God's love? Am I making my voice known? Am I dealing with my own fear, even in the face of death? And we can get really good at talking about all this other stuff and sounding deep, but not managing our own role well. That was like, oh yeah, you go ahead and be deep. That doesn't scare him. What scares him is someone who's like, I'm resting in God's love for me. I will not be shaken. And I'm so comfortable in that, and I'm so on that peaceful warrior that Peter talks about, grounded, established, restored. John says, my heart's at rest in his presence. And from that place of rest, then I will speak. And yes, speak, but sometimes also act. I will step in, but I will step in from this place of rest. I will step in this place from this place of clarity, and I will make my voice heard. Your voice is important. You're important because God views you as important. It's that simple. Everybody else's opinion doesn't really matter. God's opinion matters. He sees you as worth it. So speak. Step into it. Make your voice heard, of course. Then you make your voice heard and all the feedback. And there's actual feedback, and then there's that crazy ability we have to amplify that feedback in our own head. Well, they said this, and I know what they meant. And they meant this, and this. And we didn't even go back and ask them, what do you mean by that? Why'd you say that? Why'd you do that? And then if we do finally go back around to them, they tell us we don't believe them. And we shrink back, and we become avoidant. Because that is like a face of death. And John's not pulling any punches here. Christians were being killed. He's banished to Patmos. If church history is correct, because they tried to kill him. And God's like, it's not your time yet. So they said, just banish the guy. They're tired of him. So he's sitting there on Patmos, and he's like, hey, this is real. Make your voice heard. They overcame him. They conquered him, the dragon, by the blood of the Lamb, God's sacrificial love. By the word of their testimony, they stood and they were counted. They made their voices heard. They didn't back down. 4, they loved not their lives even unto death. They were able to get to that place of breaking the fear loop and say, I'm not going to shrink back from death. When death rears its head, I'm going to go toward it. And I'm not talking about being imprudent or foolish or putting God to the test and doing something that basically amounts to jumping off the temple. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you feel deathly things, you're like, God, what are you telling me here? Let me listen more closely. See, the book of Hebrews tells us something about Jesus' secret, is that when he started to feel deathly things, he cried out to God. He went toward God, and he was heard because of his reverent submission or his reverent fear. He feared God in a good way. And he ended up setting his face steadfastly toward Jerusalem in the very thing that was causing his fear spike, as it should cause a fear spike. And he went toward it. Not recklessly, not without prayer, not jumping off the temple, but just, God, what are you saying to me in this? Really, you want me to go toward that? I'm not sure I want to go toward that. Let me keep thinking about that. And I think you want me to go toward that. I don't think I want to go toward that. Oh, well, no, you do. You want me to go toward that? Okay, I'll go toward that. Not shrink back. So you make your voice heard. You do it meekly and gently. Peter says, do these things with gentleness and respect. Paul says, the meekness of Christ, the gentleness of Christ, not doing it the way the world does it. Anger, wrath, impulsivity, judgmentalism. Just do it. Reconvert fear to its original purpose. You break the fear loop. So now here's your kata, here's your map, here's your steps, here's your form. Right? Number one, starts with your daily life. Okay, that's just, it is what it is. That was black on my copy. Can you guys read that? Okay, so the first square says, my daily life. And I'll send this out later as an image for people. So you're in your daily life. Jesus says, get in the present moment. Sufficient for the day is the evil of that day. Just be in the present moment. You got the evil that's facing you right now. You got all your regrets and you got all your worries. Those things are wrecking you. Just my daily life. Is he trying to play with it? Okay. So the next one. Uh-oh. Well, that's not good. Yeah. Fear spike. No, I'm good. The second step is that as you're going along in your daily life, something happens. You get a spike. He'll get it back up. Ben's amazing. Just second circle as you're going. So if you're looking at your page and you're writing my daily life, there he goes. Okay, that's easier to read. Thank you, Ben. Sudden stimulus. Sudden. See, he got a fear spike where I said mine was black, and he went. But see, he leaned into it and went over and fixed it. Good job, Ben. My daily life, right? And then a sudden stimulus. I see a headline. I get a call from school, my kid's school. My spouse says we need to talk. Whatever. I'm just going along in my daily life. I've made my nice, comfortable routine. Maybe it's not very fulfilling, but it doesn't spike me. I'm just living in my daily life, except I just can't do it. There's always stuff. Right? There's that sudden spike. And I can kind of go one of two ways with it. Be like, it's the world's fault. Give me my safe space at all costs, no matter what. I need my safe space. Don't ever let me get spiked. That's never going to end well. It's not what God did when he became human and entered this world. And maybe I need to learn to manage that spike. Sudden stimulus. You have an awareness, it happens. The suddenness is as sudden, it feels to you aggressive. It may be aggressive, it may not be, but that's how it feels to you. It strikes really emotionally close. So the proximity is right there, and that's the sudden stimulus, and you get the fear spike. And here's where it starts to go south. That's happening to everybody. Right? It's happening to everybody. That's just bam. Okay? Here's where it starts to go south. That creates doubt. That creates hesitation. Or the overcorrection. Failure expected, action required, now! Why is nobody else getting this? Maybe you should think about that. Why is nobody else getting this? Elijah started talking that way. God was like, Elijah, other people are getting it. Okay, chill. Doubt, hesitation, or impulsive overcorrection from that fear spike. So you have that doubt, that hesitation. And as soon as that comes in, bad images, negative visualizations. If the event actually has bad images in it, if you walk around a corner and there's a mugging going on and there's blood and there's some, but those images, all those things create an even worse fear spike. Whether the actual images that you now have to process, or more often the case, we paint pictures in our own mind of how terrible all this is going to be. And those bad images, they do a great job of helping you be restored, settled, heart at rest. Aren't they great for that? No, then it's just worse, and we spike up. And then we can go right back to fear spike. See, it's just already right back to a fear spike. And now we have more doubt, more hesitation, or more radical overcorrection in anger, fear or anger. Okay? Bad, and we can stay right in those three. Fear spike, doubt, hesitation, anger, bad images. Fear spike, doubt, hesitation. And man, the devil's like, okay, my worst, I'm fine. Next person. All those negative visualizations. This is a map you can walk people through that have PTSD. That's a very entrenched case of a fear spike now embedded in how they process life. And if people get stuck here and they're like, this is what my life is going to be, they'll do anything to say, I'm not going to be there. And it really, a lot of destructive actions. And they're just stuck in that point. So we go and then yell at them, do the Patton thing, slap them, say, get your act together. And their fear spike goes away. Now they're terrified of you too. I mean, Patton actually did that, right, to a soldier. So stop, breathe. When you're stuck on these 3 points, fear spike, doubt, hesitation, or anger or aggression, bad images, and you're just cycling through here, and you're like, I got to think my way out of this. And the devil's like, my work, this is great. This is great. And then he's not engaging your intellect at that point to actually calm you down. He's engaging your intellect and debating you because he knows it's spiking you up. And that's where Paul comes in and says, look, we fight, but we don't fight the way the world fights. We don't use all this supercharged rhetoric and trying to destroy your opponent's position and spike their fear. That doesn't demolish strongholds of thinking. You might win the debate, but you lost the person. Now they're afraid of you. You know what? They were afraid of you before they started, and you just convinced them they're right. And maybe they are. Maybe they weren't before, but thanks to you, now they are. Whatever the issue, stop, breathe. You're not going to outthink the devil on this. You're not going to be faster than him. God's not asking you to be. Get in the present moment. This is what we talked about before. Just get in the present moment. Stop, breathe. What is your actual fear? What do you need to face? What is this causing inside of you that God's trying to say, hey, let's work on that? Breathe. The Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, there's a strong association between your breathing, God's Spirit, and Him breathing into you. This is how it shows up. Oh, what's going on here? God, what are you saying to me right now? Not what is all this saying? God, what are you saying? What are you saying you want me to do? Stop and breathe. What are you actually afraid of? What's this causing in you? Can you even really avoid it? Man, I got a bad call from the doctor and the health isn't looking good. I might die. Can you avoid dying? I mean, that's terrifying. We weren't created to die, I understand. But there's hard truths. I shared them last week. Things that happen in life that we put so much emotional energy into preventing, and we can't prevent them. We just need to manage them better. And if you could avoid it, do you really want to? If you mastered all that avoidance and basically deceived yourself, nobody else, what does that turn you into? It'll turn you into a very avoidant person, not really able to just hang in there with people, because when you hang in there with people, you get spiked. It can turn you into a critic, that person who sits in the crowd and criticizes everything everyone else is doing while they don't do it at all. People that bail on church. Church is horrible. I like what I'm doing better than what you're not doing. The imperfect church I attend is better than the perfect church that doesn't exist that you don't attend. And in small ways, we all do this. And we're not dealing honestly with our own spike and what it's saying about our character and the torment in us and how a really mature love would cast that out. John told us, but we don't hear it. The door is before you once you get in that present moment. And you can get in the present moment and then stay threatened. Stay in that victim mentality. Right? Because now you got to make a choice. Now you're finally getting emotionally to James 1, where you can actually count it all joy that this whole trial happened in the first place. We read James 1 and we just want to read over it and memorize our Wana verse. Process that emotionally. Count it all joy when you're stressed out and you have a fear spike. But you can. Or you can stay threatened. You can stay the victim. You can embrace that mentality. The other choice, you can get challenged. You can get empowered. You can turn around and say, well, I've got focus. I've got energy. These things are there. What am I supposed to do with that? And when it comes to the emotional battle, it's almost always go toward the threat. And first and foremost, the threat's in you. It's not about all this out here. If you're trying to engage all that out here and you haven't dealt with yourself well, you're already outnumbered because you're fighting that and you. And then you're blaming them for you. It's your fault I'm this way. Are you still a child that's been abused by an adult? Okay, that it is their fault you're that way. At some point, you got to grow up. Say, I'm the steward of my life. I can be empowered by that and challenged and take ownership over that, or I can just stay the victim. And if you stay threatened and you stay the victim and everything spirals out about, it's your fault, world, boss, child, spouse, friend, church, dog, it's your fault that I'm a wreck. Well, if they're actively abusing you and you're staying in that environment, get out. Okay, all right. But just generally speaking, I'm not talking about that kind of scenario at that level. I'm talking about how we typically live our daily life. All right. The door is before you. Which way do you think Michael went when God's like, Michael, it's time. You know that time where you and Satan tangled with Moses and you kind of just did the right thing and avoided it and just said, the Lord rebuke you? Michael, the right thing now is go take on the dragon. Michael's like, wow, is there like door number 2? I don't think Michael did that. Michael's like, all right, here we go. And he fought for all he was worth. And he won. He won. He won because he fought. It's not about the result. God's got the result. He won because he fought for all he was worth. He was challenged. He was empowered by it. He's experiencing that fear the right way. And if you don't, and you stay threatened or victim, it just goes right back around. And now you're cycling through the fear loop. And now, that's not point 1, point 2, point 3, point 4, point 5, point 6, point 7, point 8. And it happens in that linear way. At any point, as you learn to say, get in the present moment, take all that emotion, let it empower you in a healthy way, and figure out what God wants you to think, say, do, feel, and start trying to cultivate that right then you're on the green path. And you can do that and say, I say you're the Christ, the Son of the living God, and 3 seconds later be back on the red path. And all spiked up. So it's really, how do I get to the challenged, empowered, free? This is freedom in a cursed world. I am empowered to act and to fight and take a stand the way God wants me to. It's not about results. The results aren't going to be good in the end. I'm going to die. Everybody I love is going to die. I had a conversation with one of my children once about Lily, our youngest children, and he was using, youngest child, and he was using Lily as a scenario painter. Say, what if this was going on? I would do XXXX to save Lily. And I said, I would do that to save Lily from dying. I said, you can't save her from dying. Can you save her from dying? So what are you going to do? I'm not saying you wouldn't protect her. Just how far will you go to prevent something you can't prevent? See, is it really about Lily? Sorry, Lily. Is it really about Lily dying? Or is it about how I feel about that, and I'm not accepting that? So that makes it a little more real. These are kinds of things we have to work through. If you just stay threatened by that and say, I will stop this no matter what, you're actually like empowering the devil. This is what Jesus is getting at when he talks about do not resist an evil person. Jesus is not a pacifist. Don't take that turn the other cheek and run with it. Jesus ultimately comes with a rod of iron and beats down the enemy. But there's a certain kind of person you need to be that's very accepting of what is and not all spiked up about it before you can be trusted with force. Jesus shows that. It's not about him. He shows that by taking himself out of the equation and letting himself get crucified. Then he shows how to intervene in truly a right way. There's so many scenarios. The door is before you. Can you summon the fire of the holy angels? Can you let that raw passion that you have experienced as fear, maybe from back when you were very young and you got molested? I'm not going to ask people to raise their hands. The percentage of us sitting in this room right now who have been molested is ridiculously high. I don't talk about it. And so you have this very negative experience early in life of people that have been molested, abused, preyed upon. The devil knows that. He's the ultimate predator. But that raw passion, can you flip the switch on that to something that's like, I'm sick of living like this. I'm tired of being a critic. I'm tired of always focusing after the fact on how I could have done it better, and you certainly could have, or before the fact on how I can't really do it, and you definitely can. Who do you think you are? All this stuff that we do, just get kind of indignant about it. I'm tired of living like that. Just stay in the present moment. Sufficient for that present moment is the evil out of it. Don't multiply the evil in your own head by focusing on what someone else is doing or what you regret or everything that you dread about the future. All of that is just putting you back in the fear loop. Can you lift the veil? Look at Revelation 12 and realize you are being manipulated by your own fear. He wields our fear, the dragon, all our lives long. And he tried to do that with Jesus, and Jesus took the fear of death and said, I'll use that to beat you. Talk about flipping the script. Are you going to excuse your fear and your anxiety and your anger, or are you going to redeem it? You can redeem it. Can you lead the fear spike to Michael's joy? Just being invited to fight for the kingdom. Are you just going to settle for the mundane and blame your world for your unfulfilling life? Ow. The threatened path just restarts the fear cycle. The challenge path answers the bell. Ding. Oh, all right, here we go. I'm back in the fight. Consider some practical examples. Think about them in your life. That job interview, the girl you wanted to ask out for the teens, or the guy you wanted to ask out for the teens, assuming they're a believer and they're godly and all that. Be prudent. That mission trip you told yourself you were not called to go on when maybe you were. And you just explained it away. Or the mission trip you went on when God was saying maybe you should just accept that loss and stay behind, but you couldn't do it. And what's God saying to you? Break fear's control. That's freedom in an enslaved world. We're not going to make the world not be enslaved. That's the next world. How do we stay free when there's a tyrant? Break the cycle of fear in your daily life. You can do it, right? You will do it every time, perfectly, from here on out. Because you'll follow that map and it will never deviate from that. No. Hopefully it helps. There's your kata. Go practice. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for this day and this time. And I pray that you would help us to break the cycle of fear. In Jesus' name, amen.